All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a big one. It's one of the most influential and, let's be real, one of the most controversial books out there. Robert Greene's The Art of Seduction. Now, this thing is so much more than just a book. You could call it a manual, really. A deep dive into power, psychology, and persuasion that's got people talking and arguing all over the world. So yeah, let's get right into it. So the book kicks off with this really powerful idea. Greene says, seduction is a game of psychology, not beauty. And this is the key part. And it is within the grasp of any person to become a master at the game. Right away, he's flipping the script. The whole point isn't about having a perfect face or natural charm. Nope. He's arguing it's a learnable skill. It's a game of psychological strategy that anyone, and he really emphasizes that, can master. So we're talking about influence here. Something way deeper than just romance. Okay, so to break all this down, here's how we're gonna tackle it. First, we'll look at the basic game of seduction. Then we'll get into the 9 seducer types, the key players. After that, we'll dive into the actual seductive process, the playbook. We'll also cover what not to do with the anti-seducer. And finally, we'll wrap up with the big idea, life as seductive theater.
All right, let's jump into part 1, the game of seduction. I mean, it's pretty simple, right? You can't play a game if you don't know the rules or who the players are.
So what is seduction, according to this book? It's not just, asking someone out. It's a whole process. It's about luring someone into your world, into your influence. And how do you do that? Well, you use pleasure as the bait and psychology as your playbook. But the really cool idea here is this concept of it being like theater. The seducer is basically a director, creating this heightened reality, this special world just for their target. And that brings us to the 2 sides of the coin in this whole game. You've got the seducer on one hand. They're adaptable, they can go with the flow, and most importantly, they give you their complete attention. It's this focused energy that creates that sense of intrigue and makes you feel like, well, you're the only person in the world. And then you have the anti-seducer. The total opposite. They are completely wrapped up in themselves, they're insecure, they're needy, and they just push people away because everything, and I mean everything, is about them. So, you might be wondering, what does a seducer actually look like in the real world? Well, that leads us right into our second section, the 9 seducer types. Honestly, this is where the book gets super interesting. It lays out these different archetypes, these characters, each one with a totally unique way of drawing people in. Yep, there are 9 of them, 9 core archetypes that Greene identifies, and each one taps into a really specific desire that we all have. Now, we're not going to go through all 9, but to give you a taste, we're going to look at 3 of the big ones, the siren, the rake, and the star. Okay, first up, the siren. This one is all about pure, overwhelming sexual presence. And yeah, you should be thinking exactly of those mythical sirens from the stories, the ones whose songs were so irresistible they lured sailors to their death. It's that level of magnetism. But see, the siren's power isn't just about being good-looking. It's a whole package. They have this incredible sexual energy, sure, but it's combined with a voice that can just cast a spell on you. Add in a little hint of danger, and what you get is a living, breathing fantasy. They become something you obsess over. And the book gives a perfect historical example, Cleopatra. Look at this quote about her and Caesar. He was spellbound the moment she spoke. It wasn't just attraction, she totally captivated him. The book argues she was the ultimate siren. She didn't just date powerful men, she wrapped them around her finger, and literally changed the course of history with this carefully constructed persona. All right, next up, we have the rake. You can think of the rake as the male version of pure, raw desire. Yeah, this is your classic Don Juan type through and through. So what's the rake's secret? Well, their desire is just infectious. It's not that they just want women. It's that they seem to adore them. They're masters with words. But here's the crucial part. They have a reputation for being a little bit bad, for being a lost cause. And that reputation adds this exciting element of risk and thrill to the whole thing. And for our last example, we have something a bit more modern. The star.
This archetype is totally different. They don't seduce you by paying attention to you. They seduce you by making you pay attention to them. They become an object of total fascination. Stars get that deep down, we all want to escape the everyday grind. Their power comes from being just a little bit vague, a little distant, almost dreamlike. They have a style that's all their own, and because you don't know everything about them, they become this perfect blank screen for you to project all your fantasies onto. Just think about those classic movie stars from back in the day. Their mystery was their power.
Okay, on to section 3, the seductive process. So we've talked about the who, now let's talk about the how. And this is where it gets really methodical. The book lays out a literal 24-step plan, a whole campaign. We're just going to highlight a few of the key moves.
So look, this is not about being direct. It's a slow burn. The first thing you do is create a false sense of security. You approach them as a friend, something non-threatening. Once they're comfortable, you start sending mixed signals. A little hot, a little cold. This creates confusion, which is fascinating to people. Then you can disarm them by revealing some kind of weakness. It's strategic, of course, which makes them feel a little powerful, a little protective. Each step pulls them in closer until you get to the end game, isolating your target, getting them away from their friends, their routines, where you become the only thing they can focus on.
All right, let's talk about the exact opposite of all this. Section 4 is all about the anti-seducer. Because according to Green, knowing what pushes people away is every bit as critical as knowing what pulls them in. And these are the big red flags. Anti-seducers, they just talk way too much, almost always about themselves. They're insecure, they're self-absorbed, and they have zero subtlety. They miss all the little details that actually build connection. They're pushy, they're pestering, they're needy, and at the end of the day, they just kill any chance of excitement because their focus is 100% on themselves. Frankly, they're just draining to be around. And here's where the book kind of turns the mirror on you. It says, hey, we all have some of these anti-seductive traits hiding inside us. A little bit of neediness here, a little self-absorption there. The real challenge, it argues, is to be honest with yourself, find those qualities, and get rid of them. So it's a good question to ask. Where might those tendencies be showing up in your own life? And that brings us to our final section, where things get really big picture. This is where the book zooms all the way out to its core philosophy, life as seductive theater. This is about so much more than just romance. It's a whole worldview. This quote is really the key to the whole book. What people lack in life is not more reality, but illusion, fantasy, play. Green's whole argument rests on this idea. Most people are bored. Life is mundane, it's repetitive, and what they're secretly desperate for is an escape. They don't want more reality, they want fantasy, they want drama, they want to play. And the seducer is the one who gives them that.
And this leads to what is probably the most controversial idea in the entire book, that people want to be led astray. The so-called victims of seduction, they're not always helpless. The book argues that on some deep level, they are willing participants. They want to be swept off their feet, to be taken away from their normal, boring lives. The seducer, in this view, is just answering a call that was already there.
And to really nail this philosophy down, Green pulls out a quote from the philosopher Nietzsche. Whatever is done from love always occurs beyond good and evil. Now, he's not talking about love in a Hallmark card way. He means love as this intense, powerful, life-changing force. And by framing seduction that way, he's suggesting it operates outside of our normal rules of right and wrong. It's not moral or immoral, it's amoral, like a force of nature or a powerful form of art. So we'll leave you with this question. Once you start to understand these ideas, these patterns of influence, you can't unsee them. You start to notice them everywhere. You see it in politics, right? The way a leader builds this whole myth around themselves. You see it in marketing, how a brand makes a simple product seem like the most desirable thing in the world. The book's final point is that the art of seduction is really the art of power. So the question for you is, now that you can see how the game is played, what do you do about it?